Hey everybody, this is Brandon from Sparksmith, helping you see and be seen. Today we're going to go over the installation tips and tricks for our new animated startup sequential switchback wheel rings. First of all, we're going to look at what's inside the box when you get it, and then we'll look at how to get it installed on the vehicle, as well as how to get it wired up. Okay, so when you first open up the box, you've got a bag with hardware. We'll get into that in a minute. You'll have one extension wire that's about 5 feet long. You've got your driver with 4 outputs. You can see it has 2 channels with 2 outputs each, so for a left and a right. And then obviously your 4 wheel rings. Now, take note of the wheel rings. There are 2 rings with 14 feet of wire, and there are 2 rings with about 8 feet of wire. So obviously, the 8-foot long wires are the rings that will go in the front, and the 14-foot ones are the ones that will go in the back. And then the extension, if you need it, will be used to go from the ring in the back that's furthest away from wherever you mount your controller. So when you take the rings out, you can see it's just 2 strips of LEDs mounted to a stainless steel piece of metal. And the benefit of this is you can basically adjust these to whatever size you need. They go up to about 17 inches in diameter, but if your wheels won't quite accommodate that, like I have on my truck has 18-inch rims, so I couldn't fit, the 17-inch diameter wouldn't fit inside my wheel. So what we did was we overlapped it a little bit like this and brought that diameter in so that it fit around the brake hub and fit nicely inside the wheel. Okay, so next you want to look at your bag of hardware, and there's an assortment of stuff in here. You've got zip ties for all the wiring, and you've got 4 pieces of shrink wrap, and those will go over these connections when you're ready to wire them up. You'll slide these over, plug it in, pull this back over, and hit it with a lighter or some sort of heat source to shrink this up and help keep water and moisture out. The mounting brackets comes with 16 of these brackets and plenty of bolts and nuts to put it all together. So the way they work is when you get it over to the vehicle, this will just simply slide onto the ring, and so you mount it to your dust shield behind the brake rotor, and then you'll run a screw through here, and it kind of clamps this whole thing down and holds it in place. For wiring on these, the driver has 4 inputs. Red is for 12-volt power, black is for ground, and your yellow and blue are for the turn signals for the left and right channels. So what you'll do is you'll want to run, obviously ground goes to any good chassis ground, make sure it's clean bare metal. The red wire will go to some sort of switched power, however you want to do it. I'll show you how I did it on my truck, and you can choose what power source you want for this. It can be key on power from a fuse tap, or you can put a switch on the dash, however you want to do it. And then obviously the turn signals will just, they will go to your left and right turn signals, and you'll have to cut for each of these. You'll have to cut these connectors off and splice into it for your turn signal wiring. You can check out our other videos for some tips and tricks on how to splice into your wires. Okay, so first step in the physical installation of the wheel rings, you can see I'm on the front end of my truck here. As I mentioned before, the rings have 2 different lengths of wire, so make sure for the front you get the ones with the shorter length of wire, and then you're going to figure out kind of where to mount it. Now, one thing important to note on these is where the wires come out. Because they have a sequential effect to them with the turn signal, you want to make sure that they're all going to sequence in the same direction. And you can choose, there's no wrong answer, whichever way you want it to go. If you want it to go like circling forward or circling backward, whichever way, just make sure that the wires are consistent on all 4 corners. For mine, I'm choosing to have them start up here at the top, the 12 o'clock position, and the wires will come out facing backwards. So then I just have to take brackets and come up with, you want at least 3 places to secure these. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount one right here at the 12 o'clock position. I'm going to remove this bolt, and then we'll kind of bend this bracket up so that it fits the shape that we want it. And they're very malleable little pieces of metal, so you can kind of shape it however you want. And then I'm going to take another one down probably right about here, and then another one at the bottom, because on this truck the dust shield only goes from about the 12 o'clock position to the 6 o'clock position, and that'll give me 1, 2, 3 mounting points for this ring, and that'll be enough to keep it secure. And you'll see as I get it mounted that I want to keep it away from the brake caliper, because that will get hot, especially on a longer drive. And you want to keep this, it doesn't have to be like way far away, but just you want to keep it to where it's about like that, to where it's just not quite touching, and that'll be enough to keep it safe. So I'm going to get started on fabricating these brackets and getting them in the shape that I need. Okay, so I got the top ones in place, and next I'm going to do this one, and then I'm going to do one more down here. I'm using some number 6 stainless screws to come in. I drilled with an 1/8 inch drill bit. I drilled a pilot hole in the back of this dust shield, and then we'll run the screw in through there. The trick here is to make sure that whatever hardware you're using to go into the dust shield, make sure that it doesn't go through far enough to actually start hitting the brake rotor, because if it hits the brake rotor, it's going to score it, damage it, and cause all kinds of noise. So just make sure that whatever hardware you're using is short enough to not make contact, or cut it shorter, or whatever you need to do so that it's not making contact with this brake rotor. I've got all 3 mounting locations, the brackets are in place. Tightened those screws down and made sure that they're not contacting the brake rotor. And now you just take one bolt and one nut that comes with the package here, and you'll just run this nut down, and you'll tighten that enough to clamp it down and hold it in place. Don't tighten it too much. So you can kind of see how it clamps down on the strips. You don't want to over tighten it and start crushing the LED chips that are in there, or damage the strip or anything like that, but get it snug enough that it's not going to go anywhere. And then just repeat that for the other brackets that you've installed. Okay, so that's got the physical installation covered. We got our 3, you want to use at least 3 mounting brackets, 4 if you can, if your wheels will allow for it. Mounted them, one to this existing bolt up here, and the other 2 just screwed into the dust shield. It doesn't take a whole lot to keep these in place because they're not terribly heavy. Because mine overlap, I used some zip ties to hold the 2 overlapping parts together a little bit. The next step in this process will be to route this wire. And when you're routing these wires, you want to follow any factory wiring. So in most vehicles, you're going to have an ABS sensor. If you got an older vehicle, like a square body Chevy or something like that, that doesn't have ABS, just find a safe, secure spot to route these wires so that they can move with the suspension as it's moving without getting pinched by anything. But I'm going to follow this ABS wire up until we get onto the fender liner. Then we're going to come up to here where I finished this earlier today. I've got the wiring all run kind of back in this corner here where I've got my, find it, there it is. This is that driver with the power, ground, and turn signals. I've got those wired into some existing wiring that I had, and so I just got to route each wheel ring wire to these outputs from the driver. Okay, so I routed the wire up past the fender liner, and we'll tuck all these wires when I get all 4 of them up here to the outputs of the driver. We'll bundle all these up nice and neat, but don't forget to put your shrink wrap over the connection and slide that on there. So note that when you're plugging these in, it is a 4-pin connection, and there's a keyway on each mating piece, so make sure it just slides in nice and easy. You don't want to force it because you could break those pins, but it should just slide in nice and easy until the very last bit, and you'll feel it kind of lock in place. And slide your shrink wrap over, and grab a lighter or some heat source hot enough to shrink this down, and then you'll have a watertight connection. Okay, so I've got them wired up to the cargo lamp switch, so I can just turn them on. And you see it does the startup animation, fills the whole thing up, and then I've also got it tied into the turn signals so that when I hit my turn signals, they sequence with those as well. So that's just kind of a quick basic overview of the wheel rings, what comes in the kit, and how to get it installed and route the wiring. If you have questions about your specific installation or any other kind of questions like that, you can email us at support@sparksmith.com, and we're happy to help. Thanks for watching.